Hello coffee friends. Whether you've owned one of these auto drip brewers for a while or you've just acquired your first one, there are some easy steps you can take to get the best quality coffee possible out of these brewers. I promise you that after watching this video, you can apply these simple steps and your coffee will taste better. So let's get brewing. Hello, my name is Stephen Holm and I am with Homegrounds, a place for you to go to learn more about brewing and enjoying better quality coffee right at home. If you're new around here, be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any of our new videos, and give this video a like if you enjoy the type of content that we're creating, and if you don't, leave us a comment down below letting us know what type of videos you would like to see. So let's hop into talking about auto drip coffee brewers. If you've just acquired your first brewer, know that all of this information applies to your brewer no matter whether it's a very simple, say Mr. Coffee or something like that, to something more complex and expensive. This information is relevant for pretty much all coffee brewing. And to start off, you may be wondering, okay, I just got my first brewer. How do I even start? First, let's take a look at the two main ingredients, if you will. The first being coffee, obviously. Now there's lots of things that we could talk about as far as buying the best quality coffee possible, but just to make it as basic as possible for the sake of this video, I will just say to buy local. Anything that you're buying from a grocery store that is cheap is probably cheap for a reason. And that could be because it's just not high quality. It could be that those lesser costs are being passed down to the coffee farmers who aren't being paid fairly. It could be a whole lot of things. And so I'd recommend finding a local coffee roaster to you that has information about the transparency of their coffee, because generally speaking, the more information that a roaster can provide about the coffee, the better quality that coffee is going to be. That's a very general statement, but is typically true. If you don't have a local roaster near you, maybe seek out some online. There are some great coffee subscription services out there that provide great coffee, or find a store nearby that at least sources something good that's not just one of the big cheap name brands. The second step to getting great coffee out of the actual beans is to grind your coffee as fresh as possible. That's because, similar to, say, spices like pepper, as soon as they're ground, they start to lose a lot of the aromatics that contribute to a great taste, because so much of what you taste is actually from the smells. Now, in a perfect world, you would have a coffee grinder that you can grind immediately before brewing. If you don't have access to one, that's okay. Just try to grind right as you buy it. If you buy from a grocery store, try to buy whole bean coffee and grind it there if they have a grinder. If you're buying from a local roaster or coffee shop, have them grind it for you. Most good coffee shops will ask you, hey, what type of coffee brewer do you have, so they can grind it to the correct coarseness. So those are the two main points as far as coffee beans go. Now let's take a look at the second ingredient, and that is the water. Now we could get really sciencey and technical about the water specifications that are perfect for coffee brewing, but a general rule of thumb is that if a water is good enough to drink on its own, it's going to be good enough to brew coffee with. If you're starting with water that doesn't even taste good, then the beverage that you're making that's 98 to 99% water is not going to taste that great. So if you have good quality tap water, great, you can use that. That is generally what I use. If you use a water filter for your drinking water, use that filtered water in your brewer. And if you want to get really in depth on your water for coffee brewing, you can look into other resources and do some reverse osmosis on your water and then add back in certain things to make it the ideal quality of water, whatever. Most people are not going to be interested in that, and that's fine. But just go back to that general rule. If your water is good enough to drink on its own, it's good enough to brew coffee with. Next up, and probably the most frequently asked question I get from people trying to make coffee at home, is how much coffee and water do I use? And the best way that you're going to get good results out of your coffee is to make a small investment into a scale. This scale does not have to be specifically for coffee brewing. Any kitchen scale will really do. Ideally, it should be able to read to the at least 1 gram, if not half a gram or 1/10 of a gram is great. So if you have a scale, now I like to work backwards, looking at first how much water to use based on how much coffee you generally drink in a day. Most brewers will have markings on the side indicating water levels. For example, this brewer has both liter markings for 0.6, 0.8, 1, 1.3, but then it also has cup markings, which are probably more common in cheaper coffee brewers. This one actually says 1 cup equals 5 ounces. So if I know that I generally drink 10 ounces of coffee a day, then I want to go up to the 2 cup mark. And then I will look at how much water that is in weight. Know that 1 milliliter of water is equal to 1 gram of water. So if, for example, I am using 1 full liter of water, that means I'm using 1,000 grams of water. And then I like to start off by using ratios of around 1 to 16. 1 part coffee to 16 parts water. And that's generally a good starting point, and you can go either stronger or weaker based on your preferences. So I would take my 1,000 grams or 1,000 milliliters of water, divide it by 16, and that is my amount of coffee that I should be using. So in that case, it is 1,000 divided by 16, which is a number, this number. All right, so now we've talked about coffee, water, how much of each to use. And lastly, it's just looking at how to use your brewer. We're not really gonna talk about that in many details, but generally you're just going to use the recommended filter for your brewer, add the ground coffee, brew it, everything. That's pretty simple. I would recommend try rinsing your paper filters before adding the coffee grounds, and then you're really set on brewing. You just let it do its thing. Now we're gonna talk about cleaning the brewer afterwards, which is just as important as everything else we've talked about. All you want to do is dispose of your coffee grounds and make sure that you are rinsing everything thoroughly that is being used in the brewing process. So that means your basket, your carafe, or whatever. You want to ideally get rid of all coffee oils and any excess coffee grounds that are in your brewer before moving on. And that's it as far as daily cleaning goes. But then as far as long-term use, I highly recommend using descaler, which is pretty readily available at any place that you would buy your coffee. All you essentially would do is follow their instructions. You're usually going to add some descaling liquid or powder into the brewer, running a few cycles and doing that sort of thing. I've also used vinegar in the past for descaling. So you should really just make sure that over every 3 months or so, you are cleaning out the internals of your brewer, making sure that everything is staying nice and clean so that your coffee is clean. And so that's it for cleaning. And the last thing I really want to talk about is troubleshooting your coffee, or how to really dial it in a little bit further to get even better tasting coffee to your preferences. And that's really going to be sort of adjusting both the amount of coffee you're using, and if you're grinding at home, the grind coarseness, whether finer or coarser. And we won't go too in depth with this, but essentially when you're tasting coffee, if it tastes sour, that means that you want to extract more, meaning either adding more coffee or grinding finer. If your coffee tastes really bitter, overly strong, then you either want to go coarser on your grinds or use less coffee. Another way I like to look at it is look at my spent bed of coffee grounds after brewing. If it looks really muddy and like everything's sort of wet, I'll throw a reference up here. If your coffee beds look like this after brewing, you're probably grinding too fine. So I would go coarser until it looks something a little more like this. Like I said, that's a very basic understanding of troubleshooting, but hopefully it can at least get you started on dialing in your coffee to your preferences at home. So those are the simple steps you can take to making better quality coffee in your auto drip brewer at home. If you have any further questions, please let us know in the comments down below. We are happy to help you out. We hope that this video was helpful, and until next time, happy brewing.